Today we are talking about rituals, and I decided that I wanted to talk to this about this topic today because I've actually seen quite a few people being confused about this recently. I've seen some posts about people not understanding why. See, we have some Hyperions that understand what rituals are, and then others are kind of confused, right? You guys are all about logic and reason, so what's the deal with rituals? Do you guys use rituals? What are they? If so, isn't that just like mainstream religion or something like that? So I thought it was very important today to talk about what rituals are, how they can be useful, how they can be dangerous, and why they aren't what you think they are, and they have a perfectly valid place within a system of logic and reason. So we're going to be talking about a lot today. I'm going to give you some personal examples of mine. We're even going to be talking about animal sacrifice, which we do not condone, by the way, but talking about why that is some things that some people do, and just getting a very good understanding of ritual in general. We're going to see that ritual is an extremely powerful psychological tool that has its uses in many different scenarios, including giving your life meaning, creating a powerful bond between a community, and having to do with psychological individuation, psyche, integrating your psyche, and being able to establish links to archetypes and things like this. So we're going to see that ritual can be a very powerful tool, but we're also going to see that it's for certain people, and if it's something that makes you uncomfortable, it's not something that you have to do. You don't have to put yourself in a situation if it makes you uncomfortable. But one thing to really understand and realize about this is that there are rituals all around you. You take part in rituals every single day, and you don't know it. For example, a birthday party. You go to a birthday. You exchange gifts with someone. You light candles. They make a wish, and they blow out the candles. This is a ritual. So what a ritual does, rituals have many different purposes. But in this case, what a ritual is doing is telling you that something special is about to occur, that this day is different from other days. You have all these sort of, you live in this rat race world, which is terrible. We don't want to live in a rat race world, and we want to live in a divine world. However, currently we live in this rat race sort of world, and when you are gathered together at a birthday and you light candles and the person of importance blows them out, takes part in the ritual, it's telling everyone that, hey, this is a special moment, set apart from the rest of the day. Something special is about to happen. And that's one thing, a very important part of rituals. It tells you something meaningful is about to happen. And if you look at another ritual that's coming up very, very soon, New Year's. New Year's is a very powerful ritual. It takes place at the end of the year and the beginning of the year. Everyone counts down to midnight. It's that moment, that very special moment of ending the old and beginning the new, the death of the old and the birth of the new. And what else does everyone do on New Year's Eve? They set an intention, a New Year's resolution. They set an intention and a goal. And that's another part of ritual that we're going to talk about as well, about setting intentions and manifesting goals and making that firm in your psyche. So you can see birthday parties and New Year's Eve, these are rituals that you take part in. You just never knew it. Weddings are an extremely ritualistic, extremely symbolic. The exchanging of the rings, the huge ceremony. It's symbolizing a ritualistic bond between people and whatnot. It's extremely ritualistic. So these are just a few examples, but we're going to talk about more. We're going to see why do people do some really extreme rituals like animal sacrifice and stuff like that, which is not good, by the way, but we're going to talk about that. And I'm going to give you some personal examples and more as we really explore what rituals are and, what place they have in a system of logic and reason. And we're going to see that there are many, many different aspects to this. So I'm excited. Let's begin. So the important thing to understand with rituals is, like I said, they are all around you. You take part in rituals all the time. Like I said, I gave the example of we have birthday parties, weddings, New Year's, these are rituals. And so what are rituals? Rituals have a few different purposes. They say that something meaningful is taking place that is set apart from what is about what normally occurs. It's a break from the mundane cycle. It's like, hey, pay attention. This is important. It also creates a communal bond depending on the ritual, and it can have psychological effects. Think about the ritual of a wedding ritual. A wedding ritual has a huge psychological bond, effect. You are, creating this bond with another person or persons, and this has a very strong psychological effect, and that is what you're doing. So it's about creating these sort of bonds, and it can be very, very powerful to incorporate them in your life if you feel comfortable with it. But what I also want to stress is that these things are always symbolic and psychological. All right, these things are symbolic and psychological. They're not going to have some kind of magical or mystical or woo-woo effect on their own. I see some people who are, there's these groups like Witches Against Trump, which are really cool, right? They dress amazing, and they have an amazing aesthetic. You know what? Actually, I'm not going to use them as an example because I actually don't know anything about them, and I don't know what they do. I've just seen certain posts on Instagram, okay? So actually, let me digress and not use them as an example because I don't like commenting on things that I don't really know that much about. All right, so I don't know to the extent of what that particular group does. But that aside, I do know some witches or whatnot who will do, let's say, some rituals to, like, let's say, for world peace or to get Trump out of the White House or something like this. Now, these rituals, they're not going to have an effect in and of themselves. If you go do a ritual and for world peace, it's not going to make world peace occur, right? That's where you have to be careful, right? You don't want a ritual to become dangerous and used as an excuse, how some people use, say, let's say, prayer or meditation as an excuse for not doing anything, right? Like, oh, I'm just going to pray for world peace, or I'm just going to meditate for world peace, or I'm just going to do this spell for world peace. Okay, so if you just do the spell, the ritual, or the meditation by itself, it's not going to do anything, you guys. What these things are for, what a ritual is for, in that case, is about setting an intention and setting a goal within your mind. And it's fine and right that helps solidify a goal, helps solidify intention, but it's not going to actually happen unless you fortify it with will. Fortify it with will. Let's say you want to achieve a certain goal in your life. Well, you can do a ritual to fortify that goal, to make it to emphasize it within your psyche, within your unconscious. But it's not going to happen unless you infuse it with will. And what do I mean by infuse it with will? I don't mean thinking about it really hard. I mean going out and doing it, putting in the work to make it happen. And that's why you'll see, right? Let's say you have someone doing rituals every day to achieve a certain goal of theirs. Guess what? They're not infusing will into it. It's not going to happen. Now imagine someone else. Imagine like an entrepreneur or someone that's very willful. I'm not saying being an entrepreneur is a positive thing, or not talking about capitalism or anything like that. But you can see these people put their nose to the grindstone. They go out every day and go out to make it happen. What I mean to say is, if you take two people, one person who just does a ritual every day and puts no will into it, and then another person who doesn't do any rituals, but they put their nose to the grindstone and they go out to make their goal happen. Let's say they want to be a musician. They practice every day. They learn about, marketing, graphic design to, do their album cover. That person is the one who's going to go far, not the one who does the ritual. Now, the person who wants to go far, if they incorporated a ritual, if they wanted to, they could perhaps make it even stronger because now they're, embedding it within their psyche. But do you see where will is really the important thing? What a ritual does is it just helps you set your intention. It helps solidify the fact that you want to achieve a goal, but you have to infuse it with will. Now, there are other, uses for ritual as well, which is communicating with the unconscious. And it can, let me give you a personal example, okay? So like a personal example of mine, it's a very, very simple ritual that I did at one point, and there was something that was giving me trouble in my life. It was causing me stress and anxiety. So without getting into specifics, I was having certain stress and anxiety in life, so because of something. So what I did was I took a very, very small object and I just spent some time imagining transferring all the stress and all the anxiety into that object, right? I just took a moment to thinking about transferring all that stress and all that anxiety into the object. Now look, am I literally doing that? Am I conjuring mystical forces and removing the stress and placing it in the object? No. Nothing woo-woo is happening here, but it's psychological. I am making a psychological link, right? Psychologically, I am placing my stress and anxiety because of a certain thing into the object. This is all psychological, right? It's not, again, it's not like casting a spell or something. It's psychological. Then I went somewhere far away, right? I went somewhere far away and I took the object and I got rid of it. I destroyed it. I got rid of it. And then, I returned home and this was a big psychological relief. Now, there was, again, nothing mystical or woo-woo going on here. This is a psychological ritual that's just a communication with your unconscious because you have all this stress and anxiety in your unconscious. And so you're taking that stress and anxiety that's in your unconscious, bringing it into consciousness, and then making a link to an object, and then doing a symbolic ritual to remove that and get rid of it. And this is a communication with your unconscious, your unconscious communication symbols. That's why your dreams are filled with symbols, right? When you dream, it's all symbolic. When you dream, there's not like some booming voice that goes, hey, you're having this dream right now because you're stressed about this and that. No, you're having symbols of shadowy figures or monsters or demons or dragons or whatnot because of unconscious content. So that is an example of a certain ritual that is done to eliminate something, and it's a communication with your unconscious, you see? So it's very logical and very rational. What I want to emphasize is that rituals and things like this, it's high psychology. It's powerful psychology. And these rituals were developed, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago before there was even such a thing as psychology. So really, it was psychology being done before people knew what psychology was. And again, so it's important to see that it's very rational. There's nothing irrational about it. It's completely logical and rational. But as long as you know what it is that you're doing, then you have, people who get confused and they don't know, and then that's when rituals can become dangerous. And then you just become obsessed with rituals, and then you don't actually do any of the real work. And like I said, again, with about, getting rid of that object, we talked about the wedding as an example. Have you ever seen in a movie or something where, in a movie where someone, let's say, gets a divorce? So they drive up onto the cliffs in front of the ocean, right? They're on top of a cliff in front of the ocean, and they take their wedding ring and they throw it in the ocean. They get rid of it. Well, that's an example of a ritual, right? That's a ritual. It's that wedding ring is a symbol of a bond, and you are now symbolically casting it away, getting rid of it, unloading a lot of unconscious psychological weight that is occurring. So another important thing that I want to address when it comes to ritual is, like I said, anything can be a ritual if you use it in that way. As we've seen, rituals are a powerful way for communicating with your psyche, with your unconscious. And, I talk about rituals a bit in my book Zero. I say that, let's see, it's important to understand what rituals actually are. Think for a moment on how humans blow out candles on their birthday, or when a year ends, they make a New Year's resolution and count down from 10 seconds right before midnight. These are examples of very basic rituals. They're simply actions and thoughts done at certain points to mark a special occasion. Something is done that says this particular moment is different and meaningful. It is significant and set apart from all the rest. Their purpose is to signify that something important is about to occur. It is above the dreariness of everyday life, takes part in a high form of art, and it psychologically communicates with the unconscious. And I actually have an example of a ritual in book 0. And what I want to emphasize about this is that remember that yes, we can incorporate at point in case rituals into Hyperianism. And as long as we understand that they're logical and rational and that there's nothing woo-woo or crazy or mystical about them, we have to remember what they are. But they are powerful. Look, we want to have, we want to make this world filled with meaningful experiences, and rituals have a very powerful, meaningful experience. I mean, again, think about if we got rid of all ritualistic elements. If we got rid of, birthdays, if we got rid of New Year's, if we got rid of all these different things, life would be very boring, dull, and mechanical. We don't want that. We want a vibrant life. So rituals are a very, very high form of art. We talk about having Dionysian zones. The Dionysian rituals were intense and incorporated, so much. We're going to talk about the Dionysian mysteries at some point in one of these live streams, but they were extremely intense for those who don't know about the Dionysian mysteries. But it's important to realize that they can make life extremely interesting. But one thing that I do want to talk about here, which is important, is you can see it's really funny because you have mainstream religion that condemns rituals, right? Mainstream religion condemns rituals, but mainstream religion is filled with rituals. Communion is a extreme ritual. The partaking of Christ's blood and his body. That's a very big ritual. And baptism is a huge ritual. So it's really funny, again, as always, the hypocritical nature of these mainstream religions that condemn ritual, yet they use ritual all the time. Now, one thing that I want to talk about, though, is if you feel uncomfortable with ritual, don't feel like you have to do it. It's not something that you have to do. It's a tool, and it's something that some people find helpful. You don't need to engage in it if you don't want to. And what I want to talk about with that aspect is because, like for me, for example, when I grew up in an extreme Christian household, this caused RTS, religious trauma syndrome. And I'm mostly recovered from religious trauma syndrome. However, sometimes it still rears its ugly head. And for example, I've been in certain situations where there are, let's say, some like New Ager love and lighters who are doing their their New Age love and light ritual, and it makes me extremely uncomfortable. Why? Because it's very, very similar to church, the way really similar to church, and that brings back, it's a trigger for me. And so for me, I don't want to go near that with a 10-foot pole. I want to, remove myself from that situation. So, I want to emphasize that, if for some reason ritual makes you uncomfortable, don't feel like you need to do it. You don't need to do it. It's just a tool like anything else. Just like, if celebrating a birthday makes you uncomfortable, you don't have to celebrate a birthday. It's just one of these things that you don't have to do. It's something you can do if you want to. If it makes your life better, if it brings more vibrance to your life, do it. If it doesn't, then forget about it. It's nothing that you should feel like you need to do or have to do. That is not the case at all. But another thing that I want to talk about is, another thing that some people use ritual for is communicating with archetypes in your unconscious. There are some rituals that, for those who are familiar with, say, Vegabura or Vegadula, the certain intoning used in different rituals. What you're creating a link in your mind between, let's say, strength and fire and will and power, and then on the other hand, you can create a link in your mind between, let's say, love and compassion and whatnot. And you can sort of combine these different archetypes and then sort of call on them whenever you'd like. But now when I say call on them, it's not like you're summoning a demon or something like that. It's that you've made a psychological link. And this is very, very similar to NLP and neuro-linguistic programming. All right? And what neuro-linguistic programming is it's creating a psychological link. So let me give you an example of neuro-linguistic programming. Let's say that you feel really confident and powerful, and every time you feel really confident and powerful, you press, let's say, your middle finger and your thumb together. All right. Let's say you press your middle finger and your thumb together every time you have a feeling of confidence and power. Well, now you're creating just a psychological link between that feeling and then that thing that you're doing, that gesture, that action. So now, after you've done this for months or whatever, if there's a time when you want to call upon that feeling of power and confidence, well, guess what? You can press your finger and your thumb together, and that will be you will have created what's known as an anchor, right? And that will be a trigger that feeling. But guess what? There's nothing crazy about that. It's just psychological. It's NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And you can see that's what rituals do when they're, say, creating a link to certain archetypes and whatnot. It's in a very, it's very, very similar to neuro-linguistic programming. So what I'm saying is that, again, as I said, rituals and whatnot were about psychology. It's psychology before psychology was a thing. But it's important to remember what it truly is. You don't want to get distracted by rituals. You don't, because I see all these people in different, pagan communities and whatnot, and all they do are rituals, and all they do are spells. And guess what? Rituals and spells aren't going to do anything unless you actually go out and do it and make change and transform your life and transform the world. So that's the thing that I want to get across when it comes to Hyperionism. We want to create a new world and a new earth. And if, we can use rituals to create bonds within our community, to make meaningful events happen. But above all, we place logic and reason, and we are fueled by will, which means we know what we want to create in the world, and we're going to actually go out and do it. We're going to transform ourselves, transform the world, transform humanity. And we're not just going to sit in our basements and do spells and meditate and pray, because that's not going to do shit, guys. It's not going to do shit, all right? So it's really important to see, and that's where rituals will become dangerous. If you think it's going to do something apart from fortify intention. It's not. Okay? So that's where I want to say that's probably the most dangerous thing about rituals, is that they can be a huge distraction from actually going out and transforming yourself and transforming the world. And real quick, I said we'd talk about animal sacrifice a bit. I'm just gonna say this really quick, because so first of all, yeah, we do not advocate animal sacrifice at all, but I just see a lot of people asking this question. So, what about animal sacrifice? Why do people do this? So just as an example, I just want you to understand why. The reason why some people would engage in animal sacrifice is because it creates a change in someone, right? I mean, it's really, really gross. I do not advocate this at all. It's horrible. But basically what happens is that it affects your psyche. Imagine your psyche going into a ritual and taking life away from a living creature. That has a huge effect on your psyche. And this is the purpose of imagine that's going to be that moment is going to be burned into your mind like a brand. And this is a very negative ritual, okay? This is very negative, because you are now creating suffering, hugely unnecessary suffering, okay? So, if anyone tries to get you to do rituals that are about, that have that hugely negative connotation like that, remove yourself from that, because that is not good. But that's why, you know, some people do engage in those sort of things, and that would be very, you know, you can misuse anything, and that is a huge misuse. That's you know, that's very psychopathic, right? You know, that's a very psychopathic thing. People with psychopathic tendencies would do that sort of thing. So just to be clear, anything can be a ritual. Anything can be a ritual. But you want to use it in a positive, progressive way. I saw someone in the chat asked about, can tattoos be rituals? Yes, and see, that is a ritualistic tattoo is fantastic. You know, think about getting a tattoo of a symbol or something that has meaning to you. And then, you know, as you're getting that tattoo, concentrating on that meaning, concentrate on that, whether that's a bond you want to form or a link to your unconscious or a goal that you want to achieve. And you're getting that, you know, that moment is as that happens and you're having that experience, that painful experience, and you're focusing on that and you're getting a symbol to go with it. Then every time you look at that, you're going to be reminded of that bond or of that, you know, a link to your unconscious or that goal that you want to create. Anything can be a ritual, and always remember, rituals are nothing woo-woo or magical or crazy. They are about, they're all about psychology. But again, please remember that you don't want to get distracted by ritual. And this is probably, again, the most dangerous thing, because guess what? People are lazy, and people don't want to level up their consciousness by understanding logic and reason and Hyperion philosophy and ontological mathematics and doing inner star actualization and integrating their psyche and going out and transforming the world and going out and transforming themselves. People would much rather just sit in their basements, do rituals, pray, meditate, whatever. No, okay? So again, rituals can be powerful and inject meaning into our life, but don't fall into that trap that so many lazy humans, the Ignavi, fall into. Because people are lazy, and they would, again, it's a lot easier to light some sage and walk around in a circle than it is to work on integrating your psyche, or going out there and helping us change the world and institute a new future, or learning inner star actualization, or learning ontological mathematics, or spreading this information, or creating ways of getting this information out there, creating videos, creating any modality of any, you know, creating catalysts, things like that. So always remember that we are about transforming the world and transforming the earth. And I know that this is actually probably, when it comes to ritual, a confusing topic for many people. So if you have questions, please put them in the comments below, and perhaps I'll do a follow-up video or something like that on it.